evening, folks. This is Carl, your ticker guy, coming at you from Niceville, Florida. Listen, by the time you see this, it may be too late, but I'm going to say it anyway. Friday after the market closed, we found out that Hank Paulson was intending to use his little bazooka. Bazooka. We're going to go bazooka Fannie and Freddie. Oh, boy. How'd that happen? Well, let's talk about it. If you saw the Fed Up USA video, you know that one of the things I talked about and was concerned about was that our government was going to end up sinking itself through bailouts and BS. That we were potentially going to collapse the Treasury complex by trying to bail out too many people and put too much on our balance sheet. It may be happening, and you need to stop it. Folks, Fannie and Freddie, back in 2003-2004, were caught cooking the books. There were serious penalties imposed on them, and they were supposed to clean it up. Apparently didn't happen. You see, under the law, there's only two ways that Fannie and Freddie can have the government intervene like this. The first is for them to ask, which didn't occur. And the second is for them to be declared critically undercapitalized, which apparently did occur. How did they get declared critically undercapitalized? Well, there was an audit done by Morgan Stanley and a couple of public accounting firms, from what I understand. And if the media reports are correct, what they found is that Fannie and Freddie had been taking loans that were more than 90 days past due and not counting them as past due. In fact, they were waiting in some cases up to 2 years. Folks, once you get past 3 payments late, you're probably not going to pay. And that is the standard that banks and other institutions have used for what is considered delinquent for a very long period of time. Fannie and Freddie apparently thought that wasn't a good enough standard for them, and that in addition, in order to cover it up even further and prevent bondholders from taking shortfalls, that they would make the interest payments out of their cash flow during that period of time. Their argument is that since they tend to hold these things to maturity, that they actually won't take the loans, that they will somehow manage to fix themselves and there will not really be a loss. I don't believe it. Apparently neither did the accountants. It is particularly outrageous given the fact that these folks were in fact caught in 2003-2004 cooking the books. But this is not the worst of it. Folks, Fannie and Freddie guarantee $7 trillion worth of debt, either owned or guaranteed, between the two of them. To put that in perspective, the entire public float, that is the amount of public debt that's traded on the United States government, is $5 trillion. Henry Paulson proposes to double that, plus a little more. Why? Because he claims that if he doesn't, the mortgage funding market and the housing market will collapse, and so will the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, he's lying. I first want to present, as my evidence, the fact that nobody has a reason to believe that these securities ever were guaranteed by anybody. My piece of evidence is the front page of a prospectus from a Fannie Mae debt issue from July of this year. For 30 years, they have all said the same thing. But here it is for you to read for yourself. Do not take my word for it. I don't expect you to, just like I don't expect anybody else to take my word for it. There it is in big black print. These securities are not debt or guaranteed by the federal government or any instrumentality thereof, essentially. It is in all capitals. It is on the front cover page of every one of these prospectuses, and it has been, as I said, for 30 years. Can anyone possibly argue that they didn't know? Absolutely not. Now let's deal with the second half of the argument, that the mortgage market would collapse if we don't guarantee this debt. That, my friends, is a lie. This is very easy to handle. You break these into good bank, bad bank, essentially. On Monday morning, Fannie and Freddie open for business, and none of the previous debt or any other security that they issued is guaranteed by the government. Zero. None. All trades at the market. However, starting Monday morning, Fannie and Freddie buy only 30-year fixed mortgages, 20% cash down payments, 36% DTI. That's all they buy and that's all they guarantee from this day on. And every mortgage-related bond that they issue from this day on carries the full faith and credit of the United States federal government. The management is thrown out, the boards are thrown out, and the federal government runs the firms. You have control, you have accountability, and you have a federal guarantee. Going forward, this collapses mortgage spreads to essentially the same as treasuries of the same duration. Brings down mortgage rates for everybody in America. It provides mortgage liquidity for everybody in America. And it forces home prices to correct to where incomes can support a 30-year fixed mortgage with 20% down and 36% DTI. It forces that correction to take place relatively quickly within the next year or two, at which point it is over. And for those people who bought this debt thinking that it was guaranteed, well, it's not. Guess what? You get to eat whatever loss comes. Maybe good, maybe bad. But people will buy the new debt because it is guaranteed by the federal government explicitly. At the same time, the existing management of Fannie and Freddie need to be investigated, and if it is found that they materially misled investors or the public, they need to be brought up on charges, indicted, tried, and, if appropriate, imprisoned with a 7'2" black rapist. Folks, I have had enough of this. You should have had enough of this. The Treasury has been stealing tens of thousands of dollars out of your pocket in the home price by continuing to prop up these markets in concert with the Federal Reserve. As rates have not gone down while the Fed funds rate has, your savings has been destroyed while at the same time your home price has deflated. Now, you know what? One of them is going to happen. That is, your home price is going to deflate, but your savings don't have to become worthless. And that is what's going on here. It is time for Americans to stand up and say, enough. We're not going to risk the funding model of the federal government falling apart. We're not going to risk Mr. Paulson bailing out his buddies at PIMCO and the Chinese Central Bank. We're not going to bend over the table for the Chinese and the Japanese governments. You folks bought this stuff knowing full well that it said no federal guarantee. Going forward, it will have one. And the loans will be made to people who can afford to pay them back. Only. Leave the speculators to private money where there's no federal involvement and no GSE involvement. It is up to you folks. This announcement's going to come out Sunday. You going to let it happen? Or are you going to get on the phone? You're going to start sending faxes, emails, deluging John McCain and Barack Obama, President Bush's office, Henry Paulson's fax. You had enough of this crap? This is your chance, America, to decide. You're part of the 80% that didn't get anything out of this. You willing to pay the bill? For what? So people can rip you off and rob you? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac already got one shot at this. You're going to let them have another. Have a good evening.